let's get something out of the way real quick. Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Black Knight satellite, extraterrestrials kidnapping and probing people. All of it's real. Before you try and challenge that, ask yourself, why wouldn't very wealthy and very expensive people have the means to prove urban legends wrong? All of it's real, except for lizard people. Do you know how different we are from lizards? Nobody could be both. That's just dumb. Anyway, the reason I know all of this is because I'm someone employed to help manage all these special little pets and keep them from breaking into the real world. I was recruited by a 3-letter agency after I managed to calm and contain a Wendigo on a camping trip. Since it ate the previous containment professional, I was a shoo-in for the job. And I've been slapping collars and erecting force fields ever since. It's a good job. Every day is something different. Pay's great, benefits are world class, and if you last a year, you're basically guaranteed a job for life, however long that lasts. I was ready to call it quits after my last job, which saw me wrangling a Class C magnitude poltergeist who escaped from the Bermuda Triangle. I'm getting older and the things that I fight aren't. But my boss asked for me to take on one last case as a personal favor. I couldn't say no, but after seeing the case file, I should have. I really can't shake the feeling that this is it. This next case is going to kill me. Let's start with the facts. It's a research base in the Alaskan wilderness. That's not exactly uncommon in this line of work. If you're researching, poking or prodding something that's meant to be hidden away. An Arctic research base means that A, no witnesses can get too far, and B, the chance of reporters sticking their cameras and microphones in it are slim to none. The base in question has gone dark 24 hours ago. I mentioned from personal experience that a communications outage for a day or two in that region isn't uncommon. Weather conditions could block data signals, comm lines could get broken with snow, and so on. But I was told that given the weight and associations of their work, that was not a possibility. If the base loses its network connection for even 5 minutes, a policeman is dispatched to check in with the facility's front desk personnel. And well, as it goes, the first policeman didn't report back, and neither did the second. And then they sent a 5-man SWAT team. And then a multidisciplinary task force of ex-military, private contractors, and intelligence agents. I assume at that point, they ran out of parking and figured they should fly me in. My handler didn't appreciate that joke. The point is, a lot of people have gone dark here. People who are hardened, trained professionals, who couldn't laugh at a knock-knock joke, much less pull a prank. Chances are they're dead. And that this is one of those problems that can't be solved with guns. The research facility itself is clouded in secrecy. All I was told at first is that it's an alternative energy project. Like keep the lights on kind of energy, or wacky healing crystal energy. Agent Bronco, if I could tell you, I would. But since I'm being sent, this has something to do with the paranormal. You're correct. And I sense you're not going to tell me anything. You are again correct. Even though I'm putting my life on the line, and that kind of information could mean the difference between success and failure. My handler opened his mouth to reply, but I interjected. On my last goddamn mission, after all I've done. My handler sighed. I'm really not supposed to tell you this, but I guess it's only fair. This was a cutting-edge research facility built on a ley line, a spiritual energy source. and the researchers were looking for a way to study and use it. This ley line was news even to us, and it doesn't match up with any historical record. Apparently, it only surfaced after an underground earthquake shattered an ancient ice sheet. The ley line itself was miles down, but was strong enough to be picked up by surface readings through some cracked ice. Okay, fair enough. Do we have any inkling what happened just before they went dark? A little bit. Their last transmission mentions that they just made a big breakthrough. They reached the source of the latent energy, but that 2 members of the dig team weren't feeling well and were sent to the medbay. I wasn't told what kind of energy we're dealing with here exactly. I won't sugarcoat it. This doesn't look like your easiest assignment, but I've seen you come back successful from worse. And if you complete it, you can look forward to an all-expense-paid vacation to get your mind off it, and a pension to help you live comfortably for the rest of your life. What do you say? Alright, yeah, alright, I'll do it. In hindsight, I really wish I listened to my gut and I just said no. As they say, hindsight's 20/20. I was given a private flight and dropped off a mile away from the site. From there, I was given a snowmobile so I could get to it James Bond style. Well, the truth is, the latent energy emanating from the site could crash the plane, but I prefer my outlook on it. I loaded my pack on the snowmobile and I headed off. The sky was cloudy, but it wasn't snowing yet, and there was still some light out. For another few hours anyway. I reached the facility in half an hour. It was surrounded by police cars, an armored van, and 2 Humvees. Every vehicle had a coating of snow, some thicker than others, and each was left unlocked. I grabbed a pistol from the SWAT van just in case, and then I made my way inside. The main surface facility was a modest-sized building, and if I didn't know any better, it looks like an office building was just plucked out of suburbia and dropped in the middle of the Arctic. All I could see, all the way to the horizon, was snow and a featureless view, except for the odd hill here or there. Inside it was nice and warm. The lights were still on, which I was relieved to see. I tapped the snow off my boots and I looked around. It looks like everybody just calmly got up and left. The computer monitors were still on. Somebody's desk speakers were playing pop rock. Some desks were nice and tidy, others were messy, but nothing gave the impression that there was some great panic. I even followed a beeping noise to the break room and I found that somebody's food had finished microwaving. It was ice cold to the touch. I didn't want to spend too long here. I kept walking and next, I found the crew quarters. Nobody was home. Certainly lived in, but currently vacant. Next, I passed by the medbay. I was going to keep walking until I saw that a line of smeared blood either started or ended. I couldn't tell yet. At the door and I continued all the way down the hall. I appeared in the clinic, but it was completely empty. I stepped in. I remember the handler mentioning that some people were sent to the medbay just before it went dark. There was nobody here, but luckily, they did have charts. Patient A, 49, male. Excavation specialist, Roberts. Roberts was brought by a member of the research team after he fainted inside the cavern today. When Roberts fell, his left leg cracked on a jagged rock. He was carried back by team members. Leg infected and will likely require amputation. I put the chart back. There was one more. Patient B, 30, female. Director Campbell. Campbell was on the group brought to examine dig site progress, similar to Roberts. Campbell faded inside the cave. Campbell hit her head on a rock and was brought back by team members. Initial observation shows intracranial swelling. Swelling temporarily under control. Scheduled for medevac tomorrow morning. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone. Based on the timing, that would have had to be this morning, which should have been impossible. I left the med bay and followed the trail of blood down the hallway. I passed by a few more offices, but nothing stood out of any interest. Finally, the trail led me to an equipment room and an industrial elevator, likely leading to the ley line shaft. Mechanical parts, gasoline, pneumatic drills, and the like lined the walls. I grabbed myself a helmet, picked up a flashlight, and I stepped into the elevator. There was a pool of blood collected in one spot, which then trailed off. I figured I would pick it back up at the bottom. The elevator had a little give to it as my body weight shifted onto it, which I really didn't like. I pressed the down button and away I went. When I reached the bottom, I found a man-made tunnel system with a line of industrial cave lights guiding the way down a long, winding pathway. The trail of blood did indeed continue, and as I walked, I swear I could see pockmarks of blood on sharp bits of cave wall. I continued down the dark, winding cave. Every so often, I would come across a break room or a sleep bunker, each one empty, but not really containing anything of interest. After what felt like ages, I came across a big, dark opening. I could see the faintest bit of glowing rock along the walls and ground. I found the ley line. This cavern was so big that I couldn't see the end of it with my flashlight. I started off by heading to the middle of the room, which contains some scientific equipment and some notes. The words, Thanatos Energy, was circled and underlined, but that really didn't mean anything to me. All of a sudden, I realized that I could hear a very quiet shuffling noise, like someone brushing the floor with a broom. Out of curiosity, I retraced my steps until I found the blood that was being tracked through the facility and through the cave. As I found it and started following it in the cavern, I started to notice that it looked increasingly fresh. I kept following it right up until I found someone lying dead, his legs shredded and torn almost to the bone. I turned and looked behind me, and my flashlight couldn't even reach the wall. I realized that I was now lost. And then I heard the corpse in front of me move. It dragged itself forward a few feet and then stopped. I shone my flashlight ahead of it, and I saw a police officer standing with his back to me. Hello? No answer. Officer, what's going on here? His shoulders started to bounce, and he started to laugh. After a moment, he quieted back down again and he didn't say a word. And then without looking back, he took a few steps further away from me before stopping again. And so did the corpse. I shone my flashlight a little further, and I saw that they were standing in a line. In front of the police officer was a man with a gun slung around his back, and then a woman with a piece of her skull missing. I stepped around the line and I followed it. I must have passed by 5, 10, 15 people, shuddering in the dark, taking a few steps a minute at a time. And when I finally reached the end of the line, I stopped and stared. For the first time in a long time, I was truly left without a breath or even a thought. In front of me was a fleshy cluster of people. It had to be at least the size of a school bus. And before my eyes, the next person in line walked into this cluster, and they shoved themselves inside. The whole mass adjusted to accommodate them, and then the next person in line approached. The smell was unbelievable. The stench of death, of vomit, of human waste filled the air. Those on the outside of the mass looked like they still could have been alive. Bits of skin that I could see through the others were pale and had probably been dead for some time. Lab coats and ID badges told me that this is probably where everybody went. I caught myself letting out a quiet, "What the fuck?" And then someone inside the mass started laughing. And one by one, the laughing spread throughout the pile of bodies. And then it started to move. It slid along the ground, and I heard muffled voices crying out in pain as their skin grinded along the rock-patterned floor. I took out the pistol I swept and I fired a few rounds into the mass. Bodies groaned and leaked blood as they took bullets, but it did not slow down. And then the next person in line was snapped up by the limb, made of dead researchers. In unison, or by something binding them together, they stuck out, grabbed the person with their hands, and then were swung back to stuff the person deeper inside the mass. The mass grew slightly outward, and then grew a second arm. It pulled itself along the ground towards me, each person, living or dead, screaming and crying as the amalgam formed. It started to grab and implement more people in line, growing a bit bigger each time. I broke into a sprint and I just headed in the other way, even if I didn't know where I was going. Their laughter filled the cave. Their voices cried out in unison. "Join us! Become us! Join us! Become us!" I passed by the military contractor, the policeman, the man who ground his legs to the bone. They were all smiling now, staring blankly ahead. I waved my flashlight this way and that, looking for something, anything to help me. And then I saw the blood trail. I didn't have much time. The cave started to rattle rhythmically. I glanced back and I saw ID badges glimmering off my flashlight, 30 feet in the air. I think it has legs now. I ran, finding my way back to the narrow, lit-up tunnels. I sprinted past all the maintenance rooms and the dingy industrial lights. I ran, and just when I couldn't anymore, I reached the elevator. I stepped down and I pressed up. The elevator groaned to life and started to lift me, excruciatingly slow. I saw faces and limbs appear out of the darkness around the bend, reaching, grabbing hands, pale faces, mouth open, droning out a song of death, moaning an infectious tone together. They wiggled down the cave like a snake, a cacophony of flesh tearing out the walls and muffled screams. It was coming faster than I wanted it to. The elevator continued upwards, its slow and steady pace eventually clearing the cave wall. Thank God. I peered through the grating below my feet and I saw just as the first arm reached the wall. They started to all pull together and gang up against that wall, but after a distance, my flashlight couldn't show me anymore. The elevator continued, droning on, basically unaware of what lurked below. After ages, I reached the top. I grabbed cans of gasoline and mineral oil and I set them on the elevator. One by one, I poured them down the grate, trying as much as possible to cover as much area as I could. I could hear voices echoing from further down the shaft. I didn't want to know what they were saying. I just kept pouring out gasoline, machine oil, grease, anything that I could find. And then, I sent the elevator back down and I stepped off it. There were a few more almost empty canisters left. I think they would do the trick. After no more than 20 seconds, I started to hear the elevator struggle, and screams echo up from the shaft. It was struggling to push down, and they were likely struggling right back against it. It was now or never. I lit a match and I dropped it, and then another and another. A brilliant blaze emanated from halfway down the shaft. It still struggled against the elevator, so I kept dropping matches against it. Finally, I got lucky and one ignited and exploded a fuel canister on the lift. Other canisters exploded in succession, creating a deep rumble in the tunnel. The screaming got louder and louder, until finally, the elevator started to win and push the Legion down. And just as it started to gain ground, the tunnel collapsed above it and sent it all crashing down into the dark, hopefully to never be seen again. When I reached the main office, I opened a terminal and I sent an email to my handler. "Job's done. You're not going to believe what I've seen. Send somebody to pick me up now." To my surprise, I got a reply within a minute. "Plane's on its way. Your next assignment is a haunted tiki bar on the beach. I'll see you there. Tell me all about it." I chuckled and I shut the computer down. True to his word, a pilot showed up within the hour and I was whisked away to a tropical resort, with all the drinks needed to warm me right back up. My handler couldn't believe my story but guaranteed that the whole facility would be wiped off the map, bulldozed and flattened into the ice. And true to his word, I was retired from our agency and given a nice pension. I don't think I'll ever leave this beach. But there's one thing that keeps me up at night. No matter what I do, no matter how much I drink, no matter how loud I play music when I go to sleep, I can never scrub from my mind the faintest tone of the Corpse Golem song.